In this video, I'm counting down the top 10 best-selling light novels in Japan for the week of March 12th to the 18th of 2018. Hello everybody, and welcome to the weekly countdown of the top 10 best-selling light novels in Japan. This covering the week of March 12th to the 18th of 2018. Not a lot of change on the list this week. In fact, there are only 4 new titles on the list, so 60% of it's the exact same titles as last week, although, you know, their positions have changed slightly, so let's get right into it. At number 10, with 7,547 copies sold, Volume 10, Part 3 of Kyoukaisenjou no Horizon, or Horizon in the Middle of Nowhere. This one, of course, we do not have in English. We have talked at length about how ridiculously long these volumes are, meaning that the likelihood we're going to see it in English is... I've said it before, I think this is like a prime ebook release only kind of thing. If it ever happens, I'm pretty sure that'll be what we end up getting. There have been 2 seasons of an anime done. There were 26 episodes in total, and it was licensed for English, released by Sentai Filmworks. This, of course, a science fiction type story about the human race returning to Earth, and in order to try and recover lost technology that's been lost through years of war and conflict and everything, they start following a book called The Testament, and they basically try to recreate history, the steps of history, in order to regain all the things that humanity has lost. And there's a whole bunch of conflict and convoluted personal stories, and it sounds like a really cool series, but yeah, I don't think we're ever going to see this officially in English, and part of me kind of worries that if we do, it'll take me 5 weeks just to read a single volume. At number 9, with 9,369 copies sold, Bungou Stray Dogs Dead Apple. Now this, of course, is the novelization of the film Dead Apple. Now, Bungou Stray Dogs is a manga series which then has recently had a 24-episode anime, which you can stream on Crunchyroll. And actually, funny enough, they just announced, I believe, Thursday that Crunchyroll's been doing these like anime movie nights, special one-night events where they're showing anime in theaters, and Bungou Stray Dogs Dead Apple is going to be their next title, which is kind of cool, so they're going to be showing that in theaters. My understanding, again, nobody told me I was wrong, so I'm guessing I'm right, that this film is kind of an adaptation, an anthology type film of the anime series. These happen quite often in Japan, where they'll take a season of anime and then they'll do like a movie that kind of tells the same story, but obviously abbreviates it and compacts it and sometimes puts a slightly different spin on things. This light novel is a direct adaptation of that movie. Again, often with light novels based on manga/anime properties, we often see it either being adaptations or side stories. In this case, it is a adaptation. The series, what it's about, because funny enough, I had this on the video last week, and I didn't even give the synopsis of what Bungou Stray Dogs is about. Kicked out of his orphanage and on the verge of starving to death, Nakajima Atsushi meets some strange men. One of them, Dazai Osamu, is a suicidal man attempting to drown himself in broad daylight. The other, bespectacled Kunikida Dopo, nervously stands by, flipping through a notepad. Both are members of the Armed Detective Agency, said to solve incidents that even the military and police won't touch. Atsushi ends up accompanying them on a mission to eliminate a man-eating tiger that's been terrorizing the population. At number 8, with 9,500 copies sold, volume number 7 of Watashi Nouryoku wa Heikinchi de Tete Itta yo ne. Didn't I say to make my abilities average in the next life? This one is licensed for English release by 7 Seas. They've released volume 1. It's very unusual for 7 Seas to do this, but I guess they're experimenting. They released volume number 1 in ebook format. The physical print release is coming in June. I'm still kind of wondering why they did that. I almost wonder if they did it sort of to almost use the community as a sounding board for any kind of errors in the book before they actually committed to a print version. I don't know. Or they just thought it was like a little promo thing that they were going to see if it would boost the ebook sales to have them out earlier. Don't know. They haven't really said. When Viscount Ashamshouse's eldest daughter, Adele von Asham, became 10 years old, she remembered everything with an intense headache. Her previous self, Kurihara Misato, 18 years old Japanese, lost her life when trying to help a young girl, and then she met God. A somewhat capable person burdened by the many expectations of surrounding people, Misato, who couldn't live as she wanted, pleaded to God, "In the next life, please make my abilities average." Yet somehow, the story is wrong. The girl with 3 names, being careful to not accidentally become an S-rank hunter, tries to live normally. I mean, I'm just an average, common girl. No, seriously. I do own this. I have yet to read it, which is, well, I have to say it's a bit of an oversight on my part because I've read at least 1 or 2 reviews of this, and it sounds like it's not a bad series, actually, all things considered. I will probably review it in the next couple weeks. I'm just trying to work through what I have. My pile's very slowly starting to decrease. At number 7, with 9,780 copies sold, volume number 13 of Death March Kara Hajimaru Isekai Kyousoukyoku, or Death March to the Parallel World Rhapsody. This one, of course, was on the list last week. We do have it licensed for English release by Yen On. The 4th volume was released January 31st of 2018. There is currently an anime airing on Crunchyroll. We talked about this a little bit last week in the video about how the anime has kind of been getting a bit slagged online. Some of you had some very good points about this. I guess a lot of you, the sort of recurring theme is that the story actually has a large number of characters, and that in particular the story doesn't really start get rolling until like the 3rd or 4th volume, which is actually after what the anime seems to be adapting. So a lot of you kind of blamed the anime's poor reception on the fact that there was just too much for the anime to really properly adapt with what all it's trying to cram in, and B, that it just isn't even covering the best part of the series. I wouldn't know. I've only read the 1st volume. A number of you have kind of said to me that I should really try and at least read till the 3rd or 4th volume so that I can get beyond just the basic world building bits and kind of get into the actual story element of it. Who knows if I will when I'm already so horribly behind on things. But nonetheless, I did enjoy kind of hearing your thoughts on it, particularly from those of you that are fans of the light novel, because I think that, you know, often we talk about that, you know, the disparity between an anime and a light novel, and how often the anime can be a bit lackluster, even though the light novels are phenomenal. Don Machi always comes to mind whenever I think about that. So, in any case, so Death March, it sounds like the anime really isn't doing any favors to the light novel. Although, I mean, you know, clearly the series has its following because it's managed to hang in on the top 10 for 2 weeks in a row now. At number 6, with 11,028 copies sold, Volume 10 of No Game, No Life. This one we do have licensed for release in English by Yen On. Currently, Volume 7 is scheduled to release June 2018. I'll believe it when it is in my hands, because they have delayed that title numerous times. Still not sure why. Nobody, I think, has really been able to figure out exactly why. There is also a 12-episode anime which covered volumes 1 to 3, which you can currently watch on Crunchyroll. This one, of course, there was also a movie which covered volume number 6, which is a prequel. High point of the series, volume 6. I've said it in all the videos where I've reviewed talked about No Game, No Life. Volume 6, absolutely best of the lot. I'm looking forward to kind of moving ahead in the series, though, and seeing what happens. I mean, Volume 6, like I said, is a prequel, so we kind of left our main party in Book 5, and it's been... God, I should have looked to see when Book 5 came out, but it's probably been over a year since Book 5 came out, at least. It's probably been even longer than that at this point. So, yeah, it's been a long time since we've sort of seen where Sora and Shiro are heading in all of this mess. At number 5, with 14,113 copies sold, volume number 12 of Tensei Shitara Slime Datta Ken. That time I got reincarnated as a slime. Again, another series that we do have licensed for English. This list this week, we have a lot of the titles actually available, which is kind of cool. Yen On is releasing this in English. They will be releasing the second volume in April of 2018. There has been an anime announced. I have not seen exactly when it's going to be coming out. And this one, of course, from the list last week, about a lonely 30-something man who dies and is reincarnated as a slime monster. I've read the first volume, certainly had some good points to it. What it seems to be setting up is kind of cool, though. Like, I'm very interested to see a little bit further about where this series goes. Yeah, like I've heard some very good things about later volumes in the series. Clearly, it's a very popular series in Japan, so definitely one that I want to read a bit more of before I kind of make any kind of final considerations about it. At number 4, with 15,329 copies sold, this is a new entry on the list. It's also well, in a way, it's a brand new volume number 1, and that is Goblin Slayer Gaiden, Year 1. So this is the very first volume of the Goblin Slayer spin-off, which chronicles the events where Goblin Slayer starts to become an adventurer dedicated to killing goblins. I don't know how far back this goes. Like, I'm kind of hoping that we don't actually see the destruction of his village, because just the brief stuff we've gotten... Yeah, I don't know if I really want to read that. I don't know where this picks up exactly, whether it starts just as he decides to become an adventurer or not. I'm not too sure. I guess I could probably find out, because Yen On has not only licensed, like they've already announced that they're going to release this light novel, but they're currently simulpubbing the manga spin-off of this light novel. It's kind of interesting. So the actual manga, in this case, released before the light novel did, which is really kind of weird, because that's not typically how things go. And I mean, this is being written by the author of the main series, so I'm guessing he had to have had this done before the manga started, if they're telling the same story. So not too sure, but any case, this is that spin-off. So it's now been released in Japan. No word on when we're actually going to get this in English. I hedge bets it's probably going to be at least not until October, November, because, yeah, I mean, it usually seems to be at least 6 to 7 months after it comes out in Japan for us to get print releases, but, well, you never know. I mean, obviously, Yen On said that they were going to release this. They announced it months ago, like towards last year, so obviously they knew it was coming and they were prepared to release it, which I guess means that Goblin Slayer, the main series, is doing pretty well in English. At number 3, with 20,734 copies sold, another new entry to the list this week, and maybe proof that the main Goblin Slayer series is doing well in Japan as well, because it's volume number 7 of Goblin Slayer. This one, like I said, it is licensed for release in English by Yen On. They have released 4 volumes to date. I've read and reviewed all 4 volumes. Volume 5 is slated to release in September, which seems like a long time to have to wait, but, well, what can we do? Yen Press is also releasing the manga adaptation. They have announced that there's going to be an anime, but I'm not too sure when exactly we're going to see that. There's lots of discussion about just how that anime might get handled. My vote is still heavily censored and then uncensored Blu-ray release. That's going to be my vote. This series, it starts off with a young priestess who has formed her first adventuring party, but almost immediately they find themselves in distress. It's the Goblin Slayer who comes to their rescue, a man who's dedicated his life to the extermination of all goblins by any means necessary. And when rumors of his feats begin to circulate, there's no telling who might come calling next. This series, there are certain elements of this series that I am not obviously a huge fan of. There are elements of rape in the series committed by goblins. At least at this point, it's only committed by goblins. So, I mean, it's part of the world building. It's part of the whole idea of what goblins are. So it's not like it's just thrown in once in a blue moon to sensationalize, or I don't know why authors use rape. If it's not like some kind of key component of the story, but in any case, it's not that's obviously not something that I enjoy about the series, but it is a smaller part of it. Thankfully, the book, the manga is a little bit graphic just because, of course, it's being shown in imagery. It probably still is not as graphic as it could be, but the book is not. It is graphic enough to be disturbing and upsetting, but it is not so graphic that you get the feeling that the author is trying to over-sensationalize it. And thankfully, it's a relatively small component of the books. Other than that, I must say I really like the series. I like the characters. There's a good balance of that sort of darker, grittier, dungeon diving type adventure, as well as like bits of humor because of how the characters interact with one another. Definitely has all your very high fantasy type elements, your dwarves, your elves, and all this kind of stuff. I really like Goblin Slayer as a character, though. I could go on for a long time, and I've gone on quite a bit about him in the actual individual reviews. But needless to say, he is a relatively unique main character, so that has kind of, I would say, boosted my enjoyment of that series. I'm interested to see what Volume 5 is like. Volume 4, the most recent one, was a short story collection, which had some high points, but had some sort of mediocre points too. So I'm excited to see where the series goes once it starts back into sort of a more main storyline come volume number 5. At number 2, with 34,570 copies sold, volume number 8 of Ryuo no Oshigoto. Now, this is a brand new release, new to the list this week. The Ryuo's Work Is Never Done is the English title. We do have it being released by Bookwalker. Now, this is an exclusive for Bookwalker. You can only buy it in ebook from their website. It's not available anywhere else. They have released the first 2 volumes so far. There is currently a anime airing and streaming on Crunchyroll. It's set to have 12 episodes. You know, I haven't heard, funny enough, I haven't heard a whole lot about the anime. Like, I haven't really, I mean, there was initially, obviously, the sort of like, ho ho, it's lolly shogi. comments initially, but I haven't heard a lot about that since then. So I don't know if the anime is decent or not. We've obviously seen a big boost in the Ryo's work is never done light novel sales. Within the first 2 weeks of the anime, the top 10 list, half the list almost was taken up by various volumes, including the latest, which was volume number 7. So they seem to be kind of pumping these out. Volume 8 is out already. I think it's only been 2.5 months since volume number 7 released. This series is about a teenage boy. Open the front door, and there's a grade school girl just sitting there. I'm here to be your apprentice, as you promised. Claiming the shogi world's strongest title, Ryuo, at the age of 16, Yaichi Kutsuryu comes home to find a third-grade girl waiting for him. Hinatsuru, a 9-year-old. Come again? Apprentice? Huh? Don't you remember? He did not, but that's how the two came to share the same roof. Yaichi's spirit was on the verge of breaking, but Ai's unyielding enthusiasm reignites the fire within him. Now, I read the first volume of this series, and very mixed feelings about it. I was not a huge fan of the sexualization of lollies part of it. That said, once you kind of get beyond that, there is kind of this sweet story about this young girl who seems to be almost a prodigy when it comes to shogi, and how her enthusiasm and just this raw, unfiltered talent of hers kind of reignites the passion for the game in Yaichi, who at this point is basically being crushed under the weight of the Ryuo title that he's earned. So, I mean, it wasn't a... So yeah, there was some good story element in it. I just kind of felt like it made too much of a thing about the whole lolly thing, and, let's have lollies walk around in their underwear. Let's have lollies end up in situations that usually are reserved for teenagers. And yeah, that kind of wasn't my bag. Although I will say that there is a writer on Twitter that I follow, Frog-kun. He writes for Anime News Network. He's contributed articles to Crunchyroll, has his own blog, everything else. He has read further into the series, and he says that the series, and he was like me, he was very critical of some of the lolly parts of volume number 1. But he says it gets better as the series goes on, so I'll take his word for it. I have not yet proceeded forward, and I don't honestly know if I'm going to. Yeah, I think I'll just probably leave that one where it is. But obviously, yes, this series has benefited a huge amount from its anime. I mean, it was the number 1 spot for the Bungou list in Kono light novel ga Sugoi. And even when that came out, it didn't seem like it boosted the sales. It was number 1 2 years in a row. And it doesn't seem like the sales were boosted as much as what the anime has done. So, we've seen that Classroom of the Elite did amazing when its anime was out, and it has continued to sell just phenomenally well with each volume. It'll be interesting to see if the Ryuo's work is never done continues to be that same level of popularity, this same level of popularity once the anime is sort of in the memory of people. It'll be interesting to see what happens with volumes 9 and 10 of this series. Finally, at number 1, with a very commanding 56,604 copies sold, it's volume number 24 of Mahoka Koko no Retose, or The Irregular at Magic High School. No big surprise there. This was number 1 last week on the list, and it had only been out for a day or two when it took the top spot. An insanely popular series, coming up to its end, if you believe the rumors. Probably still have a couple volumes to go. I think they said volume 25 is starting to set in motion the climax, so definitely not going to end with 25. Probably at least another, I'd say probably 2 volumes at least. Or maybe the author's going to try and push it to hit that big old 30 books. We'll see what happens, but I mean, he's had like just over a week of sales of this book, and it's already sold 108,000 copies. So I can't really fault the guy for trying to milk this a little bit more, right? Yeah, I'd probably do the same thing, I gotta be honest. Everybody likes to make a good paycheck, especially when you're doing something that, by this point, I'd have to assume you're pretty comfortable with. This week, I'd like to say a special thanks to Taylor M. Treese, Philip Kochia, and Gorminator for their support on Patreon and all the support of all the rest of my patrons. Their continued support is allowing this channel to continue and thrive, and not only that, but allowing me to start expand into other sort of venues, that of course being the upcoming light novel podcast. I'm in the midst of talking to people about finding a co-host right now. I will hopefully have more news within the next week or so about that. It's a project I'm very excited about and looking forward to, and it's really only happening because of the support of my patrons, so very much want to say a special thanks to all of them. So those are your top 10 best-selling light novels in Japan for March 12th to the 18th of 2018. Like I said, not too exciting. Same brand, same number one. Only 4 new titles on the list, and 2 of them are Goblin Slayer books. So, I always prefer to do these lists when there's been a big shakeup and there's only like 2, maybe 3 titles left from the week before. But we'll see what happens next week with the slate of new releases coming out. See if anybody can manage to knock the irregular at Magic High School off the top. So if you're brand new to the channel, you should consider subscribing. I not only do this countdown every single week, but I also do reviews of 2 to 3 light novels on a weekly basis as well. Thank you so much for joining me in this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Till then, bye-bye for now.